Okay, yes, I know my hair is bad. We rocking the Anthony Costanzo jersey today because I thought we were gonna draft an offensive tackle, but it's this pick isn't the worst pick. Dayo, I wrote it down so that maybe I could pronounce it better. Dayo Odeyingbo. Oh, okay. Dayo, sound it out, Luke. Odeyingbo. Odeyingbo. Dayo Odeyingbo is what I'm gonna go with. There was the correct pronunciation, or probably the correct pronunciation, for the draft, but I forgot it. Sorry. But yeah, Dayo Odeyingbo. I hope that's how you pronounce it. Another defensive end. Almost identical numbers when in tackles for loss. It's almost identical numbers to Kwity Paye. He's a very similar player to Kwity Paye. Like they're very similar. Is that a good thing? Eh. I mean, sometimes you want variety to keep offenses guessing, but if you can have two similar players, then maybe it's not as big as a deal if one goes down or if you have to substitute one out because of fatigue or stuff like that because they're a similar player. So it's all good. So there's positives and negatives to it. Will they play all that much? Will one play more than the other at first? I don't know. It depends how Isaac Rochelle does. It depends how Kwity Paye does. It depends how Dayo does. It just depends on how all of them do in training camp. Right now, I imagine it's Rochelle is defensive end one. Unless we re-sign Justin. Well, if we re-sign Justin Houston, he's number one. And then it'll be Rochelle, and then Kwity, and then Dayo. Probably is what the depth chart before training camp happens. But it just depends. Do I think we should have taken an offensive tackle? I would have liked us to take an offensive tackle, but there were not as many good offensive tackles at our pick as maybe Chris Ballard anticipated. Is there a possibility that Chris Ballard trades Dayo to maybe the Bears or the Bengals? It's possible, but very unlikely knowing Chris Ballard. What is probably going to happen is maybe we draft and maybe we take a risk on a guy in the 5th round or the 6th round. And Sam Tevi is probably offensive tackle 1 for the start of the year. And then next draft, maybe, we take an offensive tackle. I don't know. I'm just kind of surprised because usually Ballard likes to develop his own guys. So I'm surprised that we aren't going to have somebody that we picked at offensive tackle. Just a surprise to me. But Dayo is a good football player. He's good at his position. He was in an unfortunate situation at Vanderbilt. But him individually as a player played very well. I mean, 12 tackles for loss in, I believe it was 8 games, unless that was in 2019. But I know his highest season he had 12 tackles for loss, and Quity's highest season he had 12.5 tackles for loss. Dayo had 5.5 sacks, I believe this year, only playing 8 games. He did tear his Achilles, I believe, and that is one of the hardest things to rehab back from because your Achilles controls a lot of your movement. Basically, any rotation, any stoppage that your foot does, any quickly stopping and changing direction, your Achilles plays a big part in that. Balance, if you're trying to balance, it plays a big part in that because you use your foot. And your Achilles is what is connected to your foot. Only reason I know so much about Achilles injuries is because I had one. I almost tore my Achilles because I had an overuse injury in my Achilles. And if I continued playing, the sport I was playing, I would have tore it. I spent a lot of times in doctor's office over the next few months, and getting to know a little bit about the Achilles. It's a very hard thing to come back from, but with enough determination and rehab and the right work ethic, which Dayo seems to have, he should return just like how we saw Julian Blackmon return. Now, yes, that was I believe Julian Blackmon tore his ACL or MCL. It was in his knee. That one's different. That one it's hard to rehab back from, but it's not as hard as an Achilles injury. But we saw what happened with him. Usually guys that Chris Ballard drafts that have injury problems in the past, they're not going to have injury problems in the pros because Chris Ballard knows his stuff. He gets research in on these guys. He probably knows their injury report from middle school, maybe even Pee-wee football. He probably knows their injury report from as far back as when they first started playing football. Chris Ballard knows what he's doing when it comes to players who have injuries. He's willing to take risk on those guys because he knows a lot about them. They spend a lot of time scouting these guys. They have a very strict criteria, and clearly Dayo fit that, and they picked him. With how strict the criteria for the Colts seem to be, from what I've picked up from hearing Chris Ballard, watching, with the next pick, which goes really in depth on how the Colts draft, just seeing that, picking up on kind of what they look for, usually what they look for is how they find quality players with the right character, and they look for athletes. They look for guys with speed, power, high vertical jump, stuff like that. That's how they get the pure athletes that you see on the Colts. So clearly Dayo is an athlete. And also on top of being, I almost forgot to mention this, he is not only a defensive end, he is also able to play linebacker, I believe, and several other positions on the defensive line. He's very versatile. Very versatile. And that might come into play later in the season if we get injuries. Versatility is one of the best things you can have coming into the league because it gives you a lot of opportunities to play. So we might see Dayo more than we say Quiddy, because Quiddy, I haven't heard much about his versatility. So Quiddy might be better at defensive end, but is he better at linebacker? Is he better at different positions on the defensive line? Just depends how the season goes, how training camp goes. But looking more into this pick, I think it was the right move. Do we trade him? Probably not, but there is a small chance. See you guys next time. As always, I'm not funny, and see you tomorrow. It'll be interesting. Also, I might miss some of the picks. So the videos might come out later, but the videos will come out on the picks. Don't worry.
Love on each other, as in, tell each other they love. I don't know, who the person is. So, the fuck you doing? The fuck you doing? Dumbass. My bad, y'all. That just pissed me off.